Welcome back to another episode of the Easy Button Investor podcast with myself, Corey Johnson, and Tucker Merrihew. Today we're talking about I actually don't think I've made a podcast on this yet, but one of my topics I'm most passionate about as of late, which is the whole topic of nationwide investing. And should you invest locally? Should you invest nationwide? Why and why not? And I think we're going to have some fun on this one. So without further ado, we'll get into the show. Welcome, Tucker.
Glad to be here.
The topic of nationwide investing has been something that's irked me for my whole career because it's never made logical sense to me. And the only people, I guess I'm getting right into it, the only people that I've ever known that have tried to go that route are people that are just eternally confused about themselves as who they are as entrepreneurs, business owners, and what they're trying to build. So that's kind of my blunt, straight up intro into the topic. But Tucker, I'll kick it to you right away and get into it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you're wrong. I always scratched my head, and we went through this time period in this business. You probably remember it, but it was like, what was it, like 18, 19, right before Rona hit, and it was like whole scaling was like the word the mantra that everybody was selling shit around, and I think during that same time period, there were a lot of kind of newer people on the scene of real estate that kind of hopped in like the 14, 15, 16 kind of ramp up period post, the real estate collapse of 08, 09 and a few more years forward from there. But, and they, for whatever reason, they came up with this idea that they thought that, the bigger your business, the better. And not just bigger in town, let's go nationwide and let's, get into all these markets. And, I've got a number of reasons why I think that is just ridiculously dumb. But at the end of the day, like, why do you need to go nationwide when you can just expand to, another part of your city, or maybe the next city south of you or west of you or whatever? Why not do that before, you say, we're going to do it in 15 states or whatever. And it just seems like a crazy thing for me. And the other thing is too, is like money wise, right? Like, I mean, I would never do that, I don't think, unless there's only one scenario in which it makes any sense. And I still don't love the business model, but the only way it really makes sense as an actual business is that you've got some sort of venture capital backing you. So you've got a big war chest, and
you got the
it's run by somebody on, in the office level that has had a ton of off-market real estate experience and is basically a pro. And they staff and train people, and they run it like a well-oiled organization that's, really kind of corporate, and not like some 25-year-old kid that's hiring 19-year-old dudes to be on the phone talking to people about their houses that, in states or they're outside of where they lived and where they've probably never even been. I mean, if you think about it like that, it's not a model that can really work long term. It's just not.
That was literally me. I fell victim to.
Sorry, I wasn't making fun of you. Did you have a gong in your office too? So when they get it,
get a bell.
Okay,
I should be made fun of. And 18, 19, we fell victim to that whole gong in the office, staff the boiler room with 20, 19 to 25-year-olds, and we were doing deals in like 7 states, and we did deals. We were in St. Louis, Fresno, Sacramento, Portland, Seattle, Spokane. I'm probably missing some as well. And we did deals. But I think the part of the topic that irks me is everyone out there, if you're listening to this show, if you're trying to build your business, you're trying to build something exceptional. If you're putting in time and reps and you're educating yourself after you put the kids to bed at night, you're trying to learn and study and get better, you're trying to build something exceptional. And if you're trying to build something exceptional, you have to be exceptional and your understanding of the business. And it is impossible unless you have a venture-backed company and you can spend $20 million a year on hiring really good people. It's damn near impossible to learn what you need to learn about a given city, county, zip code, state, when it comes to zoning, when it comes to who the players are, when it comes to who you call for problems, when it comes to normal issues with the property. And every city has their own culture of real estate. There's only things to look at. You go to Seattle, you have a lot of unfinished basements where if you didn't know that, you're going to miss out on a lot of deals. You have a lot of oil tanks buried in the backyard than a lot of places you don't have, like in Phoenix, if you're doing deals in tract home neighborhoods. You have a lot of septic issues. So there's just, every market has their own things. And I think what I really realized this early on in the game. And when I just realized that every market we added, you're just delaying your brand being known for something in your market, which brings you a lot of opportunity. You're delaying being exceptional, knowing all the zoning, knowing who the players are so you can maximize your deals and revenue. And then 3, you're really just chasing low hanging fruit. And that to me is not how you build a business. Low hanging fruit is the solution for people who don't know how to run a business. And instead of saying, hey, how do we get better at sales? How do we get better at marketing? How do we build a brand in our market? Let's just go for the lowest hanging fruit across the whole country and make some money. And you will make some money, but I've never seen anyone, and I know a lot of people who start local, go nationwide. I've never seen anyone start local, have success, go nationwide, and keep doing that for years. They more like try it for 2 quarters. Like, oh, this is awesome. We did some deals. And then they realize that now they're underwriting properties in 17 different states and cities and trying to find buyers in 17 different markets, dealing with different laws, different title and escrow processes. It just, you're building a conveyor belt to get deals through. And now you have this confusing, like 17-part conveyor belt with different laws and regulations and rules and paperwork. And in one state, you can evict tenants. In another state, you can't. It just creates a whole cluster, a mess of the business for absolutely no reason. So those are like my core beliefs around it. I have a lot more to talk about, but I don't know if there's anything you wanted to double click on there, but that it's just crazy.
I think the biggest thing that I really want to hone in on is you don't build any brand equity if you just are, pond skimming, as I've called it before, but you're basically pond skimming in every market for low hanging fruit. That's the most that you can do, right? When you start to spread yourself out that far. And so, if you're going to put time into building a business and you're building it right and you're trying to, create a name for yourself, and there's no way to do it with the way or the model that you're running, why are you doing it, right? And most of these guys that do it, like I said, if they're not venture backed and they don't have just a shit ton of money to kind of pump into this thing to build this brand nationwide and have a, or multi-state, visibility and marketing on different channels, there's just no reason to do it, because the other thing is you've got so much opportunity in your own markets too, right? I mean, obviously some people live in smaller markets than others, but, even around where you live, just kind of expanding there first, or like, why not be the best at acquiring off-market deals within the city that you live in, like the absolute best, hands down, before you move into another city and another market, right? It's like marketing channels, like master one before you move to the next. And so, people just think, oh, we'll go to these cities, or, they've got cheaper houses and, we can pull this list and we'll just kind of pond skim and try and find the low hanging fruit. But at the end of the day, you're not building a brand, right? And most of the time, like I said before, you're running it with 19-year-old kids that don't know shit about real estate anyway. And, all they're trying to do is sell people or get them to say yes to a number, and, kind of using hard sell tactics and things like that, which, the internet is now full of those douchebags for whatever reason. Like, sales is not meant to be like, you can hard sell people, but that's not like the best way to sell anybody. It really isn't. It matches with certain people's personalities and that's why they push it, but it is not the best way to sell people at all. But on top of that, I think we've run across a lot of deals that we ended up buying that out of state companies had either under contract or we're trying to engage them in contract. And, I have to assume that the close rate on deals where they actually engage people with a contract, regardless of the company, are incredibly low. And, so on top of the fact that you're not building any brand equity just for people knowing who your company is, the only thing they do know is that they hate you most of the time, right? Like, because your close rate is so low, they just know that they hate you. So everywhere you go, you leave this thumbprint of I hate you most of the time, as opposed to like the business that I've run is, if we, say we're going to buy something, unless we find something crazy, like we're buying it, right? We're reliable, and they leave saying we really like those guys. It was great doing business with them 9 out of 10 times, versus the other way, which is 9 out of 10 times they say, I never want to talk to those people again.
Yeah, I have an educated assumption that probably 99 out of 100 people or more that get into the business never build a business that can pay them $1 million in a year profit. And I think 99 out of 100 people would be thrilled with that business. You do not need to invest in more than one county or do deals in more than one county or city to build a real estate business that can pay you $1 million a year if you set it up right. And so if you think through that lens of like, if you're listening to this, would you be happy with a real estate business that paid you $1 million, say $2 million, $3 million in a year? Well, you can build that in one county. When you have the brand equity, when you have the right relationships, when people bring you deals just because they know who you are, that to me is, if you can answer that question, and if it's a no for you and you're like, no, I want $20 million a year profit from my business, well, even then maybe it's possible. But at that point, maybe you explore expanding a little bit. But that doesn't mean you're living in Oregon doing deals in Arkansas, or you're living in Washington, D.C. doing deals in Miami for no reason. And I think there's companies like Keegley. There's the companies that have successfully ran a version of that business in multiple states, but they normally only do a certain function of the business. Like Keegley only does dispositions. They're not doing any deal sourcing. So they're just building, essentially what they do is they just build buyers lists in different markets. They're like a New Western. They're just building buyers lists in different markets, and they have brand credibility. People bring them their deals and they sell them. I don't know how well that works, but they've been in business for a while, so obviously they're doing okay. So I think that's the only way. Either you're venture capital backed, and even a lot of them have gone out of business eventually once they run out of money, or two, you're only specializing in one function of the business and not any certain market, and you're just building buyers lists. I don't think that's a good business either. So I think for you guys listening to this, and you answer that question, yeah, Cole, yeah, Tucker, $1 million profit in my market paid to me every single year from my business is plenty for me to live the life that I want to live. Well, there, you have your permanent answer now. You don't need to go nationwide to do deals. And the concept of nationwide, I think anytime I hear someone say that, to me, it's just them saying, hey, I don't have the skills yet to be as good at business as I want to be. So I think extrapolating, again, going after that pond skimming, low hanging fruit is going to solve that. It's never going to solve that. You're just going to delay your process of building your brand equity, of building the skills you need, of learning who the players are, having the right title and escrow company, knowing who to call, right? Like, I think, Tucker, you've built your business off of like, if you need to get a job site sped up, you know who to call, right? And I think a lot of people don't realize that once you're ingrained enough in an area and a community for long enough, it gets easy. James, I love Tucker and James's business models kind of against each other because they're both very high profit. They just take different amounts of revenue to get to that profit, right? I think at the end of the day,
and everybody's business is a thumbprint, right? So like,
but I think
they're not supposed to be the same.
I think the point there is, in Seattle, Jimmy operates in 3 counties, and they do, I think, between $40-50 million in revenue a year across their flipping, development, wholesaling, lending, like their enterprise. They're in 3 counties and they're strict with that. They won't leave. And they still, there's way more deals, way more people doing deals. There's so much opportunity there. But now they're at the point where you reach this like escape velocity where everyone knows who they are. So they get deals brought to them all day. They get their stuff first because they know who to call. All the contractors want to work with them. He's buying deals off the MLS. It's no one else is seeing value in because he's been so entrenched in that market for so long. That to me is sticking to an area, building your skills for long enough. And I think a lot of us just try to get rich too quick. And that, again, when you said 25-year-old with a bunch of 19-year-olds, that was me, except I was the 19-year-old, 20-year-old. And I was just trying to get rich too quick. And when you try to get rich too quick, you don't build the skills and problem solving and team and track record to eventually actually get rich. And I think that's the issue that I face.
Yeah, well, and you can very easily burn yourself out too, right? So it's like, what are you doing all this for if you just end up burned out a year or 2 later and now you got to reset your entire business, right? Like, okay, yeah, you got experience, you know what you don't like now, but I would say 99.9% of people aren't going to like that monster that they end up building too, right? I mean, you do something like that, the machine has to be bigger, the number of salespeople are bigger, the amount of marketing, whether outbound, inbound, that you do has to be bigger. It's just a lot. The number of deals that you're trying to keep together, you're trying to sell, work with title companies that you haven't worked with before, or that don't know you very well, or that aren't comfortable with assignments or whatever. There's just a lot of friction points there. Whereas, if you're doing it in your farm areas or your city, the plural that, you're able to kind of grow into, You know who the title people are. They know you. They'll pick up your cell phone to cell phone calls. They'll make problems go away. They'll, they'll hide your assignment fee through some way, shape or form if need be to just get stuff done, or give you an addendum route to go so that it makes it real easy. Like there's just so many less problems when you have all those people that you have these long-term relationships with, not only personally, but like long-term in terms of sending them business, doing business with them, right? When you're kind of going all across the country, you just can't do that. I mean, it's going to take a long time to do that in each and every one of those markets. And so it's just, man, I don't know. I can't think of a dumber model, honestly, to create the most friction possible for the least amount of net profit possible for the owner. Like to me, that's what that seems like.
And you kind of built this whole brand equity machine in Portland where you knew the who's who, you knew how to get things done. And then you said, hey, I'm going to move to Naples. A question I had as you were talking was, when you did that move, what were the core things that you realized that were like, oh shit, I had those in Portland and it made my life a million times easier? Relationships, whatever it was that removed friction. Like, was it people that you knew? Was it just material? Was it the contractors? Like, what were those few things when you first moved there where you're like, man, shit, I'm going to have to rebuild those functions? And what were those functions?
Relationships and brand equity, right? Like relationships are what make the real estate business really easy or really hard. And that's just because you need so many people for every transaction, right? You got to have, whether it's just internally people that work for you, or it's the people that work for you and the service providers around it that kind of help close it or deal with it, or probate attorneys, or title agents, or here we can use title companies, or we can use attorneys to close stuff. So there's all it's all kinds of crazy stuff. And then of course with subcontractors, if you're in the world of rehabbing or building, like that's the most difficult part of construction is, who do you have a guy for this already that you trust and that likes to do business with you? If you don't, like the front end of that part of the process in trying to find a new guy to do a new trade that you've never, used before, that is fair, good at what they do, and values the relationship just like you would value the relationship, that's the hardest part. But once you get those guys, then it becomes really easy. And so we had those guys for, a decade plus, in Portland. And now we've built and replaced, with people here with the new business that we built. We've got most of those guys. We don't have all of them. We've only been here for, the beginning January 2021 is when I actually landed here to start building everything out. But then on the flip side, brand equity, that was such a huge thing for us, on the last few years that I was there. And it took a while to build it. It wasn't like it was overnight, but within the last, probably 4 to 5 years that we were there, everybody knew who we were. If people got a marketing piece from us, they weren't like, oh, these guys are scammers. They're like, oh yeah, we've seen their houses. They're really nice. Right. And so that brand equity caused people to call us before they called anybody else, or talk to us before they talked to anybody else, whether it was referral, whether it was, outbound marketing, inbound marketing, whatever it is. And so, we've had to recreate that here, and it's a slow burn, man. You can't do that overnight. I mean, just like James, that's been years and years in the making, for his brand equity that he's created up in the Seattle area. But once you get that, it can never be taken away from you. Yeah. Right. So it's like, if you're going to put in the effort to build a real estate business, like, why not build one with brand equity, right? Why build one with zero brand equity if you're going to put in the same amount of effort? To me, that just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. And I think one thing for you guys listening to this, like, Tucker's been in this business, 20-ish years now? Like
23 years.
23 years. And, ran a good business. And it still was taking him years, 4 years in, he said he's still missing some pieces of that team he's trying to build. Like, it just takes longer than you guys want to build that brand equity, to build that team, to build those functions in your market. And for me, like, I've been talking about off-market real estate and marketing for 8 years now, 9 years. And I just feel like now I have kind of a strong brand associated with that. And people think of me when they think of that topic. It just takes so long that every time you're adding in markets, you're restarting that clock, restarting that process. And the business that you want, typically speaking, in real estate, relationship capital is more valuable than money in a lot of ways, right? Because especially if you're doing your own marketing or sourcing deals, you're going to run into endless opportunity. But you can only capture a lot of that opportunity if you have someone on speed dial you can call and say, hey, there's 2 vacant lots here. How do I make money here? Do I entitle it and sell it? Do I sell it right away? Do you want to partner on it and build together? If you want to learn a certain function of the business, like there's so many ways that for me, relationships have been how I've gotten to where I am. It's really the only reason. And the way that you build that is by becoming someone in your market. And in my opinion, I don't know your opinion on this, Tucker, like I think you should focus, if you can, unless you're living in a Amish community and wherever in Wisconsin, you should focus where your feet are, in my opinion, where you can go to a meetup, where you can shake hands with people in person, where you can sit down and have a dinner. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think someone, if they're choosing a market, because a lot of people go, oh, what market should I choose? Do you think it should be where their feet are? Do you think that's important as well? Or do you think it's just they just choose one and just focus on it, even if they live somewhere else?
I mean, I would say 9 out of 100 times, as long as you can, where your feet are, right? Yeah. I mean, I've always had issue with the like, we're not going to come see you. We're just going to send you a contract, sign it, type of business. And I know it works, whatever. You can tell me whatever you want, but I still think it's a stupid business. I don't like it because real estate is not meant to be virtual. It's really not. Because there's so much that when you run that type of business, you don't understand about the houses. You don't understand about the rehab process. You don't understand the product that you're ultimately going to be trying to sell to whoever the next person is that's going to buy it from you and try and renovate it and make money selling it to a retail buyer, right? So it's kind of like it's almost like a greater idiot theory, right? Like you get it, hopefully you get it for cheap enough and you got to sell it to somebody else who is also an idiot because they're buying it from somebody who really doesn't know what they're selling, right? And that's why most of those companies, when they put stuff under contract, they try and sell it and they're like, ooh, we missed the mark on this one. Then they got to go back and they're like...
I think the nationwide average on a wholesale deal is like 50 or 55% of them fall through.
Yeah, because they go back and they go, we need a $70,000 reduction. And they're like, what? Like they missed, or a 30, whatever it is. Like, it's just...
We thought you had a third bedroom.
Yeah, like some bullshit, whatever. And it's like real estate is, yes, marketing and sales is super important to, acquiring off-market properties at good values. But at the same time, to know nothing about the product that you're trying to buy, it's a very difficult thing. And then if you extrapolate that and you're trying to buy something that you know nothing about in a market that you know very little about, it's just, it's like one bad idea on top of another. And you can get away with one or two, but you get that third one, it's like that Jenga thing, right? You're just pulling them all out and it's like, eventually it's going to collapse. And
the loser is the seller too.
Right. And then it's a black eye on our industry, which is why now there's all kinds of regulations to try and make, wholesaling illegal in certain states and other things that are going, I mean, who knows where it's going to shake out overall, but, we have a very poor reputation because of business models like that. And, now that I'm older and, I can do a variety of different things in real estate, and you kind of look back and you're just like, yeah, you can do this business right. You can help people. You can buy the stuff that nobody wants to go sit on their couch and talk to these people and deal with them. And you get a tremendous value for doing it. But that's why we get the tremendous values. It's not just, people have to understand, yes, sometimes it happens. You call somebody, they're a weak moment, they say yes or whatever. But like truly the reason why we get great buys with tremendous amount of value built in is because we'll do the things that your average realtor doesn't want to do, that average people can't do or aren't comfortable doing, which is going and sitting on a piss-stained couch, listening to somebody ramble about God knows what, but then telling them it's going to be all right and building rapport, and then they sign a contract with you and you got the opportunity to make $100,000 like that, right? I mean, you're doing the things other people don't want to do. And so when you remove that part of it, I think you remove a big part of the understanding of this business of why we're able to get value, right?
And I think because I tell people a lot of times when I go, hey, set up a Google review site, and they go, I can't do that. And I'm like, why? Like, because half my deals fall through. It'll be all 2-star reviews. I'm like, well, then you have a problem. Like if you are running a business where you're screwing over intentionally or unintentionally that many prospects and people or and sellers that you're too scared to have a Google reviews account because you think you're going to get mostly 2-star reviews, that's how you know you have not gone deep enough in your market and understood the properties and gotten good enough at underwriting. And to me, you shouldn't be scaling at all if that's your situation. If you can't, and yet you're going to have crazy people in this business to go leave you shit reviews no matter what. Like that's always going to happen. There's people that I know that have showed up in the newspaper. And I think you showed up in the newspaper before just for random shit, right? Like,
yeah. I mean, that was because I lived in a liberal.
Yeah.
That's pool of people that didn't like my marketing, but yeah.
But if you're laying in bed at night going, man, I just hope that the 50% of sellers we screw over don't leave me a bad review, you have a business model problem. And you have, in my opinion, some internal moral.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, man, I would feel so bad when we would have to like not buy a deal because something came, even if something came up, right? Like there's oil tank and it's been leaking for 30 years. And once we got the testing back and they're like, you got to excavate the whole lot because there's so much oil in all the soil. And like, I got to go to these people and be like, we can't close in 2 weeks and we definitely can't buy it at the price that, we were agreed on. Like, I would feel really bad about that, even though, it wasn't a function of me doing my job wrong. And I built in those checkpoints to make sure that we check those things out before we buy it. But, as you grow and scale and you do this nationwide thing, like the amount of give a shit factor is very little too, because you don't know these people. They're not involved in your daily life. They can't come down to your office. There's no way that there's overlap that they might know your brother's, whatever, your parents, your uncle or what. There's none of that. So there's very little give a shit. And I think that is a big negative for our business.
100%. Well, that's, I think, a good encapsulation of this topic, boiling it down to build the skills and reputation and brand equity in one market because it pays off. If you're good at $1 million or $2 million a year profit, you don't need to expand beyond a county or two. And just look internally at skill set and why you're doing what you're doing and realize it just takes longer than you want. And I know everyone at the beginning of this business, there's this push to like get rich quick, but I think having a business that you're proud of, that you sleep well at night, that you're not screwing people over is a way better way to make money. So unless you have anything else, Tucker, we'll wrap there on this topic for today's episode. So anything else you want to touch on, or are we good to wrap?
Just focus, man. You can make all the money you need right where you're at the vast majority of the time. So focus there first. And then, if you want to take on the world after that and whatever, go for it. But focus where you're at first.
A lot of it's an ego thing. Like you guys know, there's no one coming to give you a trophy because you do 300 deals a year or because you're in 7 different states. Like no one cares.
There's no real estate investor awards where they put you on stage and they give you a trophy and $1 million check for, having the most number of states that you do deals. It's just, it doesn't exist. So, it's a fallacy. So let's,
All right, guys. Well, until next time, you're only one deal away, as always. And wherever you listen to the show, leave us a review, a like, and then let us know what you want us to talk about, what you want to hear. We have a lot of good episodes coming up for you soon. So until next time, get out there, get some deals done, and just focus. Stay in your market, keep getting after it, and build your brand equity.